Look, I think it is a mistake to assume that we will have high tariffs in perpetuity. I don't think that would be good economic policy. I am not a fan of tariffs. If the result is our trading partners jack up their tariffs and we have high tariffs everywhere, I think that is a bad outcome for America. Tariffs are a tax on consumers, and I'm not a fan of jacking up taxes on American consumers. So my hope is these tariffs are short-lived and they serve as leverage to lower tariffs across the globe.
Republican Senator Ted Cruz, who typically kisses up to President Donald Trump, has decided to come out against Trump's tariff policies. In fact, he is hoping that Trump is bluffing.
So let's get this straight. Donald Trump launches one of the most reckless, economically damaging trade policies in recent memory, and now Republicans are suddenly shocked. Now they're clutching their pearls, acting stunned that might actually hurt the economy. Really? Where were they when Trump was proudly calling himself the tariff man like it was a Marvel character? Even Ted Cruz, who usually treats Trump like the second coming, is now warning about economic fallout. Spare me the bravery act. This isn't about principle, it's about the stock market tanking and GOP donors starting to sweat. Let's be honest, the second the wealthy get their tax breaks, these tariffs will vanish. In this video, we're breaking down Trump's tariff circus, why Republicans are finally pretending to rebel, and how this whole thing is less about saving American workers and more about pulling off a political bait-and-switch. At the core of it, a scam designed to squeeze regular Americans while the donor class cashes.
Uncertainty about the future of the American economy has certainly had an impact on the stock market. The stock market is just reeling over this news, and they don't believe that this is necessarily going to be a temporary situation. There are other people on the right who have been speaking out against what Trump is doing here, but what do you make of this? Do you think that Ted Cruz is right in his prediction that this is just going to be temporary?
It fits in with exactly the theory I'm telling you guys. And look, I want everybody, left, right, center, everybody pay attention, and if I'm wrong, hold me accountable, okay? So I think that Ted Cruz is saying that because he knows that as soon as they do the tax cuts for the rich and for corporations, they're going to get rid of these tariffs because the stock market wants the tax cuts and doesn't want the tariffs. And the stock market and the donor class always gets what they want, 100% of the time.
Do you think that Trump is implementing these tariffs in the short term to cause some pain among American consumers, and then they're going to be desperate for those tax cuts as well? Because right now, Donald Trump's tax plan is not polling well. It's not popular because Americans aren't dumb. They know that it's mostly a big gift to the rich and corporations. Do you think that he's maybe inflicting some pain on ordinary American consumers to drum up support for his tax plan?
Yeah, maybe. That's a really interesting theory I hadn't thought of, right? And so you might get a twofer there. Oh, don't worry, the tariffs are going to magically raise $6 trillion, so we can give away $6 trillion to the rich. Also, boy, you could really use a tax cut now after I punish the living crap out of you by raising prices so much. That's an interesting theory. And there's a third thing here. As we talked about earlier in the show, Trump actually believes in tariffs.
He does.
But in a comical way, right? Like he thinks they're magic, that we can get rid of the income tax, that it'll create trillions of dollars. So I think he thinks it's a threefer, a word I think I just made up, where he thinks, oh no, it'll work, right? He's the only one who thinks it'll work. Plus the other two things, which is why the rest of his team are doing it, and he's also doing it. So I think those are all reasons why he's doing it.
In a rare break from the cult of personality surrounding Donald Trump, several high-profile Republicans, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, and John Kennedy among them, are voicing disapproval of his sweeping tariff policies. Cruz, usually a reliable yes-man for Trump's agenda, is suddenly hoping these tariffs are just a temporary bluff, a move in the art of the deal, rather than a long-term economic strategy. But let's be real, this isn't some sudden outbreak of principle. The pushback from GOP elites has far less to do with conscience and far more to do with donor pressure, and with Democrats scoring surprising electoral wins in places like Wisconsin, and even gaining ground in deep red Florida, Republicans are realizing their seats may not be as safe as they once thought. In this light, their opposition looks less like courage and more like self-preservation. The economic fallout of Trump's tariff spree is as predictable as it is damaging. Tariffs are, at the end of the day, taxes on consumers. Prices rise, purchasing power falls, and once again, the working class ends up footing the bill. Experts like Ed Jardini are already warning about stagflation and even the risk of a looming recession. Meanwhile, the stock market, that sacred cow of America's elite, is wobbling under the weight of uncertainty, and it's not just numbers. On a spreadsheet, when manufacturers like BMW start reconsidering operations in South Carolina because of tariff costs on imported parts, that translates into real jobs, real communities, and real livelihoods hanging in the balance. This isn't bold economic strategy. It's a chaotic experiment being conducted at Main Street's expense.
There's chaos. I feel internal chaos right now, right? Because I feel like there's finally an opportunity to implement smart tariffs that could be beneficial. Sure, tariffs are always going to have some short-term pain. I acknowledge that. But this was an opportunity to implement targeted, smart tariffs that actually, in the long run, are beneficial to American workers. And I'm just angry because I feel like an opportunity is being wasted here.
Actually, real quick on that, and then I'm going to tie later Wisconsin and Florida election results to this story. Yeah, it's part of why you're seeing the Republican rebellion. But Anna, if you care about tariffs and doing it right, and you're a real populist, whether you're on the left or the right, and you think that it could help our manufacturing base if we targeted it right and executed it right, this is going to do enormous damage. We'll never talk of tariffs again. After the short-term pain this causes, and after they pull it, and you don't get any of the long-term benefits because they pulled it, nobody will ever talk of tariffs again. So if you were in that camp is about to be lit on fire.
Because guys, look, understand this, okay? There's a reason why most of the jobs in the American economy are service sector jobs. And that's because we have outsourced all of our manufacturing jobs, or most of our manufacturing jobs. And I don't think it's been beneficial for American workers to just rely on the service sector for work. It's been pretty disastrous. In fact, the Lever had previously published this. We don't have a graphic on it, but I want to read it to you because I think this is definitely true, and it's so weird to see things flipped around now. Because they had written that when Bill Clinton rammed the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, through a Democratic Congress in the early 1990s, the most Democratic trade-exposed districts in America quickly became the country's most Republican districts. So voters actually turned on the Democratic Party as a result of NAFTA and some of these free trade agreements for obvious reasons, right? Those free trade agreements absolutely decimated American jobs.
Yeah, and by the way, there's something that no one's talking about in the context of all these trade deals and tariffs, et cetera, which is that the number one problem isn't that we have trade deficits or even that other countries impose some tariffs on us. The number one problem is that the trade deals are not written by us, as in the US government and our representatives. They're written by corporations. So all the trade deals are geared towards helping multinational corporations. I mean, it's literal.
Yes.
The legislators literally give it to the corporate lobbyists.
Yes.
The corporate lobbyists write the trade deals and then bring it back. So what do you think is gonna happen? They're gonna let they're gonna let the companies outsource your jobs because it's gonna cost them less money. The corporation isn't going to write the trade deal to benefit you and give you higher wages and more jobs.
Yes.
So
that's exactly right. And
that's the actual cancer that Trump is not addressing at all, and of course neither are the Democrats.
Yeah, and by the way, I mean, how did they placate Americans? Not all Americans, right? A lot of Americans have been angry and frustrated, and I think that led to a situation in which someone like Donald Trump gets elected. But how did other Americans feel placated or get placated? Well, it was through cheap goods, right? You exploit labor in other countries. They get paid way less, but it's okay. Americans will be happy because they're going to have their cheap plastic goods. And look, for some, that was good enough. But for others, we'd rather have better jobs and American-made goods. But look, again, I really do feel like an opportunity for those targeted tariffs is being squandered.
The real tragedy is that there actually was an opening for a serious conversation about smart, targeted tariff policies, ones that could strategically protect American industries, strengthen national security, and slowly rebuild our manufacturing base. But instead of a deliberate plan, the Trump administration grabbed an economic sledgehammer and swung it wildly, slapping blanket tariffs on nearly every sector and trade partner with no rhyme, no reason, and zero coordination. What could have been a turning point for responsible trade policy has now been reduced to a reckless spectacle, and the fallout will likely poison the very idea of tariffs for years to come. By the time the backlash is over, no serious policymaker will want to touch them again, even if used in a way that could help working-class Americans. A pivotal opportunity for economic renewal is being squandered in a blaze of bravado. So, what's the strategy here, or what passes for strategy in Trump world? One theory is that these tariffs aren't really about trade at all. They're about manufacturing pain, economic pain. By driving up prices, Trump makes American consumers so desperate for relief that they'll embrace his otherwise unpopular tax cuts, inflict the wound, then sell the bandage. It's a baton switch at a national scale. Remember, Trump's tax plan has never been popular. Most Americans recognize it for what it is, a sweetheart deal for corporations and the wealthy. So maybe, just maybe, this tariff chaos is an elaborate setup to push through yet another gift for the donor class. If that's the case, it's cynical political theater of the highest order, with ordinary Americans caught squarely in the crossfire. At the end of the day, this isn't just about tariffs, it's about power, who has it, and who benefits from it. Trump likes to play the champion of the working class, but his policies consistently serve corporate interests and billionaire donors. And now, publicans who've enabled him for years are scrambling. Not because they've suddenly found their conscience, but because their grip on power is slipping and the economy is starting to crack. This could have been a nuanced, forward-looking debate about protecting American industry with targeted trade policies. Instead, we're left with chaos, confusion, and yet another scam dressed up in a red hat. So the next time someone tells you tariffs are patriotic or that Trump is standing up to China, ask them this: who's really paying the price? Because it sure isn't the billionaire class. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you think about the GOP's rebellion and Trump's so-called economic nationalism. See you next time.